I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James White, Field Yates Meanakeims. All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back into another episode of the Patriots Daily podcast here on the CLNS Media Network. I am Mike Kadlick. He's Tayler Kyles. We were going to do, in full disclosure, with our sort of schedule and plans here and what we have coming down the pipe for Patriots Daily. We planned on doing a mailbag today, so we asked for your questions on Twitter. That mailbag will come. We will probably do it tomorrow at some point. It just won't be today. We want to kind of quickly set the table on what we heard and saw down in Foxboro today from Jerod Mayo, some additional roster cuts following waiver claims, and then quickly just what we saw at Patriots practice. So again, a quick update here, in and out, what we saw in Foxboro, and then we'll do our mailbag tomorrow. We'll probably also look out for some sort of reaction tomorrow if and when the Patriots do name the starting quarterback, which we'll get to right now, Taylor. So at least in my mind, I went down to Gillette today thinking that today would be the day that Mayo would tell us what the deal is at QB1. It seemed like it made sense, the how it would line up, where last week he said that they would have a decision by Monday or Tuesday. We come in Wednesday. This is his opening press conference, and this is the time to tell us. It didn't go like that. I will say he seemed very somber in his approach today with us. He looked like he was a little down, and I think that had to do with all the cuts they had to make over the last couple of days. They made a bunch of cuts. They get the 53-man roster, which we talked about yesterday here on the show. But then they claimed 4 players on waivers and unfortunately had to let 4 more people go. So before we get to the claims and some of the cuts that have been made, your reaction to Mayo's lack of a starting quarterback announcement today, what it means, and what you think we'll ultimately see tomorrow, when that comes about.
Yeah, I personally wasn't that bothered. I know I heard some comments saying he should have just announced it today because he gave us the reason for why he didn't is, players are in and out. It's kind of hectic, which He's been a player and a coach. I think he understands the timing of this better than we do. Also, he didn't specifically mention the cut downs as a part of the decision, but there's also the elements of, some people are probably down because you make relationships with these players, and Jerod Mayo, Elliott Wolf, everybody, who we've talked to has made it very clear that relationships are very important for this regime, and they want all these guys to know they're cared for. Jerod Mayo even mentioned when he parted ways, I think it was with Juju maybe, that he does still want these to be long-term relationships. It's not just, you're out of here, see ya. He still cares about these guys. So I think that explains why he was somber. I think that, also there was no real surprise in practice because unless something changed behind the scenes, we went there and we saw that it was business as usual. Jacoby Brissett with the clear starters, Drake May with the clear backups. So I don't know if he needs to make a formal announcement to the team right now because they're at practice and they can see it. Although I do think it is important to make sure everybody's there and you can announce, because it's not guard, it's not, defensive tackle. You're talking about the guy who's leading the entire team just by the nature of the quarterback position. So I understood why he didn't announce it today, because there were so many other things going on with all these roster transactions. There's still people coming in and out of the roster. We don't even know what the final, outlook is going to be necessarily. So give it a day. Then tomorrow, he said he will announce to the team. We'll find out after that. There's no media tomorrow, so we may not hear specifically from Jerod Mayo, but I'm sure it's either going to get leaked, somebody's going to report it, or maybe we find out on Friday when we do get to speak to.
So on the roster moves that needed to be made, it has just been reported by Doug Kyde. We have 2 more cuts. So the Patriots today, after claiming their 4 players, I want to get to those guys. We'll give them their due in a second because I know you've been looking at them a little bit. But they claimed 4 and they had to release 4. And the 4 that have been released are wide receiver Jalen Reagor, cornerback Isaiah Bolden, which we knew before practice. And then it was just reported today by Doug Kyde that Michael Jordan and Trysten Hill have both been released by the Patriots. And so not surprising considering those are the 2 guys that were absent from practice today. When we did our attendance down there in Foxboro, we found out that, we saw that those guys weren't out there. And the Patriots also just sent out a release as well. They have claimed those 4 guys, and they have released Bolden, Reagor, Trysten Hill, and Michael Jordan. So again, that's the kind of stuff that's tough, where they make the 53-man roster. It's announced by the team. You think you're safe, and then all of a sudden these 4 guys, unfortunately, are sent packing. Now we'll see if they come back in the practice squad, if they get re-signed. Things like that. There's a bunch of different maneuverings and what have you. But I want to get your thoughts, Taylor, on the 4 guys they did claim. And it's linebacker Curtis Jacobs, offensive tackle DeMontre Jacobs, defensive tackle Eric Johnson, and offensive tackle Zachary Thomas. I know you were just saying before the show that you like DeMontre Jacobs, a guy who's been in Denver the last couple of years. So, again, it's been, 4 hours, and you've gotten some time to look at some film and kind of look at the background on these guys. But a quick synopsis on what you've seen from the guys they've claimed so far.
Yeah, one, let me correct myself for the media availability. We do have practice tomorrow. It's just no Gerard Mayo, and then there's no practice on Friday. I'm still getting all this stuff.
It's all
under control in my brain. But yeah, so the players, I'm just going to look at the list, how it was tweeted by Tom Pelissero. So first, linebacker Curtis Jacobs. He was mentioned by Gerard Mayo that he's probably going to be a special teamer. He was wearing a number in the 20s for the Chiefs, so you could tell a little bit of an undersized guy. I read his scouting report coming out of college. He was deemed to be more of a coverage linebacker, not really someone you wanted on the field against the run, although that's where he made most of his impact in the preseason tape that I was able to watch. So he mentioned like he's somebody who's going to be flying down the field. So there's maybe a core special teamer for you. DeMontre Jacobs, I do think is really interesting. He's a big guy. He's athletic, big hands, long arms, really fits what Scott Peters likes. Obviously, #strike system is when I tweeted. I think Phil Perry tweeted out his whole athletic profile, because that is really what we've seen that Scott Peters likes. He wants these guys who can initiate contact, and he also wants athletes, obviously, because they run this outside zone pin pull kind of scheme that does value athleticism. And when you look at his preseason tape, the outside zone stuff looks really good. He's moving in space, pulling on tosses and blocking guys at the second level and even the third level. He's getting some movement and cutting guys off in some of those outside zone runs. And the way that he moves, I feel like if Scott Peters can really get those tools under control, he might be someone with some spot starter quality backup upside, maybe a low-end starter. I don't know. It's just really the tools. I did some research also. The Broncos, from all I've heard from their beat and everyone who follows them, apparently he's had a good summer, looked good in the preseason, didn't see a ton of really bad reps on his tape, again, from what I got to see really quickly. So that's someone I think Patriots fans are a little excited about. Probably gives you a little bit more upside than what you would get with somebody like a Calvin Anderson, who, one, has struggled to stay healthy, which is super unfortunate. Like last year, obviously battling malaria and, couldn't really play all season after, struggling early on with his health. And now this year, we still don't know what the injury was exactly, but then he ends up probably going to be on injured reserve because he didn't get claimed. So a little bit more upside at that depth tackle position. Zachary Thomas, actually, he played left tackle for one game in week 3 for the Rams last year. It was against the Bengals. He did not look good against Trey Hendrickson, but most people don't. It really put him in a tough spot, to be honest. This preseason, though, he was repping at both guard spots. I actually thought he looked good on double teams. He's got the athleticism to get him to the second level. And both of the guys that the Patriots brought in, actually, both DeMontre Jacobs and Zachary Thomas, had over 80 pass block grades from PFF. So a little bit of pass protection help there, maybe something to work with. And then finally, Zachary Thomas, the one guy I didn't get to watch a ton of, but coming from that Colts.
What the hell? You couldn't get to it in time? Jesus Christ. I can't say that. But come on, Taylor. You got to get to this.
He got back. But he's really more of a penetrating type of tackle in the vein of a Tristan Hill. So maybe the Patriots see him as an upgrade at that position, obviously, because of the corresponding roster moves there. The offensive lineman, I dig it. I think Zachary Thomas, maybe you slide in for Michael Jordan, a younger guy with maybe a little bit more upside who they think fits their system. Eric Johnson, probably going to be someone they use in pass rushing situations to try to get some disruption on the inside, mix in with Daniel Aquale, Jeremiah Farms, those guys. And then Curtis Jacobs. I don't know what's up with Isaiah Bolden, if they're trying to bring him back or what. I thought that he and Rager, given what their roles were and the way that they've been talked about, were virtual locks. Now, with Rager, I think it was a little more iffy because he and Kayshon Boutte seemed like they may have been competing for that 6th receiver spot. They kept 7. Obviously, now they move on. If they do truly move on from Rager, the thought would have been, finally Isaiah Bolden gets to return some kicks. But, he's not on the roster. So I guess like Antonio Gibson steps up, KJ Osborne, Jalen Polk. Those are some names that initially come to mind when you talk about return.
They cut 3 kick returners in Jalen Rager, Isaiah Bolden, and Kevin Harris. So it'll be interesting to see. Again, Antonio Gibson is a guy who's been in that position before. He did a lot in Washington, but you wonder where they're at with the new dynamic kickoff and what they want to do with, if they want, again, not every team is going to run a reverse every single time, but you can kind of get creative and you wonder if you have 2 guys back, if you have 1 guy back, and how that's going to work. So it's interesting that they did end up releasing 3 of those guys.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna get to what we saw at practice, but first, a quick word from our friends at PrizePicks, because PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active users. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you got to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. It's the best way to get in on the action on sports in most states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Geez, want to play PrizePicks alongside Drewski, Joe Budden, and MMA champ Sugar Shane O'Malley? You can find the community plays under the promos tab on the app to view entries. I lost because I have our producer texting me that my microphone isn't in. Do I not sound right on here? Do I sound
I think
okay?
you sound fine.
All right, sounds good. Lineups stay in play even if one of your players get injured. If your player leaves in the first half or doesn't return, PrizePicks keeps your picks alive. So PrizePicks, they invented the flex play as well. It means you can still cash out of your lineup if it isn't perfect, and you can double your money even if your picks don't hit. So head over there today, download the PrizePicks app, and use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, that's PrizePicks. Head over there. Use code CLNS. I noticed actually, Taylor, when we were doing yesterday's live show and we had a bunch of people in, I was saying, this is awesome and like the video and do this and that. And I was like the video, it helps. A ton of people like the video. We got a ton of likes on our video. So what else you can do if you're into it, head over to PrizePicks, use that code CLNS and get that. That'll help us out as well. So we appreciate it, guys. We really do. All right. So continuing on with practice. So 3 guys were absent. City So, Michael Jordan, Tristan Hill. Obviously, two of those guys were released, so we know that's why they weren't there. The other one is City So, who, according to Gerard Mayo, Mayo told us that he did avoid, or he thinks he avoided something serious. So left the game in where the heck did they play? Oh, Washington. Left the game in Washington in a walking boot. He was seen in some sort of brace, I believe Dakota Randall said today in the locker room. I didn't see it, but Dak reported that he's in some sort of brace. He wasn't at practice, but again, looks like they avoided trouble. They didn't place him on short-term IR, so that's good news. Other non-participants were Christian Ellis, Josh Uche, and Vidarian Lowe. Vidarian Lowe dealing with that back injury. Christian Ellis didn't have a helmet, was reported to have a head injury after the game, so maybe concussion. Don't want to speculate, but that's kind of what it's looking like there. And then Josh Uche continues to have an undisclosed injury, and he did not participate either. So that's sort of the housekeeping stuff. I will say too, and I'll kind of let you take it from here. We did get a nice view of Scott Peters in the offensive line drills today at practice. I did notice that Layden Robinson, Mike Onwenu. I want to tee you up. That's why I'm doing it. I'm gonna be quick. But Scott Peters was there right in front of us, right where reporters are. Most people, most normal reporters on one side checking out Drake May and all the quarterbacks and everything else. But Tayler Kyles, no. He's standing there watching Scott Peters go through his strike system with his offensive linemen. So were you able to take away anything from kind of being able to listen a little bit, watch that stuff? I know we can't report on exactly what coaches say, but what happened with the offensive linemen today at practice?
Well, I guess my biggest takeaway from Scott Peters, that part, is that this team is not going to be bad because they're the penalties were bad, and that's a sign of, coaching, obviously. That needs to get cleared up. But in terms of the technique stuff and the striking and how they leverage their blocks and all that stuff, he is so detail-oriented. It was really cool to hear him kind of talk a little bit about what what they're expecting from the Bengals and how they're going to counter it. That was really fun. Can't tell y'all a word of it. Plus, it wasn't anything crazy. It's literally the very beginning of practice. My biggest takeaway from the group, though, so you had Chuks Okorafor still very much at left tackle. Left guard, it was Nick Leverett.
Yep.
Now, once again, the assumption is that City they still have a week, so we don't know for certain what's going to happen with his health necessarily. for week 1 or long term. Again, did avoid something significant. But Nick Leverett seems like he's the top backup at guard. I think he's the top backup at every single interior line spot, especially now that there's no Michael Jordan. And Layden Robinson was at right guard, actually. Yep. And then you still have Mike Onwenu at right tackle. So it seems like they have more faith in Layden than Caden to start immediately, which based on the preseason tape, I think makes a lot of sense. Caden was fantastic in the second half, but those were also against guys who may not be on an NFL roster, if we're being totally honest. So it was fun to watch because he was literally playing with his food, Caden Wallace. Like, he's just waiting for these guys to strike because he knows he's like, I'm not going to go first. So you can go first, and then I'm going to make you look stupid. Still, he is showing signs of progress, but the top of line, once again, Chooks on the left side at tackle. Then going down to the right, it is Nick Leverett, David Andrews with Layden Robinson starting at right guard and Mike Onwenu at right tackle. Not the combination I want necessarily. Obviously, one, because City So's not in it. I just don't like Mike Onwenu at tackle, but at the same time, he is the best tackle they have. He has a bit of a shorter corner because he's 350 pounds, but he has super long arms, which is why he's so good in pass protection as a guard. They'll be able to get by, I think. I also think that the O-line issues outside of discipline and, not getting flagged, I think they're overrated because if you look at the tape, David Andrews said it, Gerard Mayo said it. There's a lot of good things on tape. They have things they need to clear up, but they're correctable. It's not like last year where you have half the offensive line shooting both their hands, looking like they don't really know what they're doing out there and just getting smoked every other place. So I feel a little bit better about the offensive line long term, but obviously you want to see City So back in there. But, right now it's just looking like he's going to be out at least a week, but hopefully maybe something changes and we see him out at practice before week 1.
One funny thing that caught my eye in that offensive line drill was Chooks Okorafor, who got called for 3 illegal formation penalties in Sunday night's game. Okorafor lines up, and it was him and Leverett on the inside, and he's looking, and he sits there, and then he looks inside, make sure he's lined up right, and he does like a big leapfrog forward. Like, I am making sure that I am against this line of scrimmage so I don't get called for this again. So I thought that was funny. I know it wasn't funny to us or Patriots fans or Patriots coaches on Sunday night when all that crap kept happening. But I think ultimately you're right, Taylor, where alarm bells are going to sound on this offensive line because of how bad we have reported that Tuesday practice was. And then the game was okay. But then Sunday night was not good as well. And a lot of it you mentioned was discipline. So if you want to take something away, at least in my opinion, it's like, okay, it's been slammed into Okorafor's head. I need to get on this GD line of scrimmage. Go ahead.
I have a feeling it was one of those like Belichick moments with Gerard where he probably flamed Chooks. Because even talking to us, he sounded like he was not happy with it. He didn't sound like he was taking any excuses. If Chooks if he gets called for it again, I'm not fully kidding. I'm starting to think, okay, is he going to be on this roster by like midseason? Yeah. Because it was such an egregious mistake that kept happening. And I think after last night or after that game, it got to the point probably internally where they're saying, if you want to be an error repeater, we're not letting rookies do it. You can't do it either.
Right.
So I don't want to stir anything up. I don't think Chooks is getting cut or anything. But if you keep seeing, like I think he's fine in games. I don't think it's great, but I think that if you had to start for a year, you could do worse. But at the same time, man, if Caden Wallace starts playing well, at some point it feels like he's going to take one of those tackle spots anyway. If all goes to plan, might have to start making some moves, So just I hope that Chooks has learned and we never see him make that mistake again because I don't know how patient they're going to be if this keeps happening.
Right. I mean, again, it's something where I think we were talking about it off air where, they can be disciplined, but they weren't disciplined. But they can be, and it's like we were kind of going back and forth on it. It's like it's pretty simple. You can't let that happen. And you're right as far as the we'll talk about that in a second. But yes, they can be good if they're undisciplined. They weren't disciplined, and it's basically it's results based. Where if it's going to keep happening, see you the F later. You can't be an error repeater, and it's really that simple. So I think you're right as far as I don't know if he was flamed by Mayo, but it's in my head now. I'm going to stay on the line, and that won't happen, and we can move forward. Quickly on Los's comment on Onwenu, Taylor, we'll talk about game time on my end. Then we'll wrap up with a couple Patriots practice, more Patriots practice notes, and then we will quickly hit on the quarterbacks before we get out of here. Do you want to hit?
I could honestly say, the Onwenu one real quick.
Okay.
I don't really care whether it was confusing them or not because looking at the film, it looks like Chooks is a tight end who's off the line. Yeah. It doesn't even look like he was close. It'd be one thing if it's like a hair or something like that. they were all egregious. Even JT O'Sullivan, when he was doing his breakdown of Drake May, made it very clear, like, what are you doing? I can see from the all 22 from the sky cam, you can see that the guy isn't lined up right. So I don't think there's any good excuses for maybe for Nwenu. Maybe he gets a pass because he only did it once, but for Chiefs, there's zero excuse because every single time he was clearly not on the line of scrimmage or breaking the center.
It's like, okay, the refs didn't make sense with the calls. Like, that's the rule. You have to line up on the line of scrimmage. It's kind of black and white. And especially last year, I think we talked about it on the postgame show where Jawan Taylor, the left tackle for the Chiefs, was lining up way back there. He was false starting on every play. And they were setting up a clean pocket for Patrick Mahomes, and they didn't call it for a long time. And everyone was I think other coaches were complaining about it. And so they're making it known this year, we're going to call this. They bring the refs in. They tell the team. I don't know what can be more confusing than you're an offensive lineman. You have to line up on the line of scrimmage. But anyway, hopefully Sunday night was an anomaly, and they can move forward and clean up the penalties. All right, let's talk about game time real quick, Taylor, because football season's back. It's not the preseason anymore. There were $9 tickets in Washington. That's not going to happen in the regular season. However, if you are a Patriots fan and you want to travel to Cincinnati to watch the Patriots, you can get into Patriots Stadium on Sunday, September 8th for as low as $154. Not too bad for a potential Super Bowl contending team, the Bengals, against your hometown Patriots. Head over to GameTime. There's super deals, amazing deals, great deals. That's not just me saying it. That's literally what they're labeled on the website. So head over there. It's awesome. They make it super easy. There's a new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets even easier to see your favorite teams play. They filter out the fluff and show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And it's also not just sporting events. There's concerts, there's theater events, things like that. And GameTime makes it super easy to go get the lowest price tickets guaranteed. So download the GameTime app today, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. That's GameTime. Head over there. So we'll do practice notes, a couple more that I had. We'll talk about the QBs one more time. But the Patriots did also officially sign 7 players to their practice squad. That includes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 written down, so I want to make sure I have it correctly. But the Patriots practice squad, they can have up to 16 players, but they have signed 7 of them, and that is tackle Liam Fornadell, or offensive lineman Liam Fornadell, running back Kevin Harris, running back Terrell Jennings, wide receiver Matt Landers, defensive end Jotham Russell, defensive back A.J. Thomas, and tight end Mitchell Wilcox. They were all in camp. None of them are from other teams, and they were all at practice today as well. So that's kind of housekeeping news. I don't know. Do you have any additional thoughts on those guys coming back? I know you were pretty excited about Terrell Jennings. Everyone else, I think, is pretty much status quo that those guys will be back. And one note, too, Jotham Russell doesn't count towards the 16 players that they can have because of his international pathway program sort of thing.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm literally sending out a tweet, and I thought I could do it at the same time. I could not. But I'll say, okay, so most of these I think were expected. I thought A.J. Thomas, Matt Landers is like prototypical X. He's going to be your scout team, that ISO receiver, whatever freak they probably going to be either T. Higgins or Jamar Chase week 1. Liam Fornadell was actually kind of funny in practice. He's literally just holding the pads.
Yeah, I noticed that. He was basically a coach, yeah.
That was really funny. Kevin Harris and Terrell Jennings, that's awesome for the Patriots. Those are 2 guys I really like this summer. I think Kevin Harris showed real improvement, so good on them for bringing him back. A.J. Thomas, I thought, was a sneaky guy who did do well this summer. He ends up returning. That was a surprise for me. The one surprise, I guess, is Mitchell Wilcox because he was not good this offseason. But, Austin Hooper did mention he's got some versatility, whether that's him being a jack-of-all-trades, master of none. You can decide for yourself.
And they need tight end depth. Like, they need it bad.
They have no other veterans other than Henry and Hooper. And if one of those guys goes down, then you have to rely on Jaheim Bell. I don't think that's a fair position to put him in. So that one didn't really surprise me either. It just wasn't one that I necessarily had at like the top of my list.
Yeah. All right. 2 more practice notes I have from today. Quickly, Hunter Henry returned to practice, which was huge. He had missed the last couple days, maybe a little over a week with an undisclosed injury. But he returned, which is huge for the offense. He stepped right in with that first grouping. And I wanted to kind of make this a little bit more noteworthy. Jalen Polk looks like a starting wide receiver on this team. And we talked about it last week. But again today, though they haven't named a starting quarterback, Jacoby Brissett looks like the starter. And that's what we're going to close out on is the quarterback position. But it was the first grouping, and it was Tyquan Thornton, the, quote, starting X. It was Hunter Henry, the starting tight end. It was Ramondre Stevenson, the starting running back. It was Pop Douglas, the Patriots' best wide receiver. And then the Z was Jalen Polk. And that's noteworthy. This kid is coming in, 37th overall pick, and he did enough over the summer to earn himself a starting spot. I think that is something, we're doom and gloom with the offensive line right now. I know you're not, but, Patriots Nation is. It's exciting to have not only a Drake May who's going to come in here and be, one of the quarterback of the future, but a guy in Jalen Polk. It looks like it's early, but they might have hit on a wide receiver. I think that's huge. On that note, the second grouping with May there, it was Booty and Baker and Jaheim Bell, and it was KJ Osborne in that second grouping. So again, they're going to rotate through. They're going to use multiple guys. It's not starters and just backups who have to come in case of injury, but definitely noteworthy that Jalen Polk looks like the starting Z receiver to start the year.
Yeah, and in the game, it was KJ Osborne, even though we had seen Jalen Polk as a starter a lot in practices, so it was kind of confusing. So, we'll see what actually ends up happening week one, but Jalen Polk has been one of their best receivers. I'd say along with KJ Osborne, I think they've been neck and neck is outside of Pop, the most consistent producers. Yeah. So really good for Jalen. You're actually getting one of those young guys in the mix. Also, not to be slept on, Javon Baker now looks like he's probably the second string X receiver now that there's no Jalen Reagor. So expect him to get a lot of opportunities in some of their 3-by-1 formations, getting him one-on-one. I still think that Tyquan is going to be the guy they lean on, but I think it's probably going to be some competition necessarily. But I do think that they'll swap, and at some point you want to see who ends up producing because Tyquan Thornton didn't do much this summer. On the field, he had his flashes, but it wasn't the same. And then Javon Baker fell off the face of the earth in terms of production later in the summer. But yeah, the way that receiver depth chart is shaken up, it looks like a lot of the young guys are going to be thrust into prominent roles, and that's exciting.
Yep. All right, we opened with the quarterbacks with a decision looming. Let's close with the quarterbacks here, Taylor. So we don't have a starting quarterback decision, at least on paper, from Gerard Mayo yet. It's looking like it's going to be Jacoby Brissett. So first and foremost, do you think there's a chance that it's Drake May tomorrow and that, they're yanking our chain and it's going to end up being Drake May? And in your opinion, should it be Drake May? Should they just throw the kid into the mix, throw him into the fire now, get those reps under his belt early? Or should they use Jacoby Brissett, the veteran, and ease him into this process?
Well, Gerard Mayo's been pretty honest with us. I think he's put his foot in his mouth a few times. Maybe he spoke it too soon. Maybe not phrased things the right way. But he said a decision's been made and then went on to warn us that, the things they do for the team right now may not be the best thing for the team long term in terms of, and it didn't sound like they were putting Drake May in. It sounded like, no, we're going to do something right now that people may not like, but it's for the betterment of what we want down the road. One, that has to do with the team because you're still thrusting Drake May and saying that you are the leader of not just the offense, but to a degree, the entire team. He still has to come along. There's plenty of veteran leaders. It's not like he's going to be leading any speeches, but there was a responsibility that comes with it. So I think there's that. The fact that JT O'Sullivan did a great job breaking it down on the QB School. Go to YouTube, watch all his videos as much as you can. He's an incredible resource. But he pointed out some things about the offense that I was a little bit hesitant to really tweet about before I listened to what he thought. And one issue with Drake May that has been popping up. We've seen some of the throws weren't pretty, like the weird jump throw to Pop, the one to KJ Osborne deep, which a little both ways because he had the pocket closing in on him, looked like he was trying to move the safety, whatever. But one consistent issue was kind of moving up too far into the pocket. There were times where Nick Leverett or Lane Robinson were getting pushed back, but Drake was exacerbating that at times by stepping into the pocket rather than standing still and was really setting a base and throwing because there were some good pockets to operate from. And there's also some times where with Jalen Polk when he throws the hospital ball and then the guy ends up getting sandwiched and it's well, did you not see the safety even though you saw him running with the tight end? What was the decision there? Drake still has things he has to improve. He's not a finished product. That's true of any rookie quarterback starting, but I also don't think this offense, which we know wants him to see other looks, to have answers to problems that Jacoby Brissett actually has. even though he did outplay Jacoby, I still think that there is some level of we need to make sure that he's not just getting thrown into the lion's den and doesn't have the best opportunity to succeed. Now, if Jacoby is starting for a month and still plays poorly, that's when I think you start talking about maybe starting Drake, because you do have the answers on tape and things for Drake to study and improve from, what have you. But based on Mayo saying what he said about doing what's best for the team long-term, and again, as we saw in practice, Jacoby Brissett was QB1 with Drake May as the QB2 with the backups. I think it's pretty obvious where they're going. And I'm not mad at them, quite frankly, because I don't think that, a year or two down the road, we're going to care that maybe they didn't look so great for a month in September in the first year of a rebuild. I know everyone says, oh, it's been a rebuild. Whatever.
It hasn't been. I'll fight that tooth and nail that this is year one of a new rebuild. It's a new regime that's not Bill stuff. You're going to get me mad, and we got to wrap this thing up soon, Taylor. But I agree with you. I think Brissett starts week one. The only thing that, the regret that you were kind of just talking about, where why didn't you start May sooner, is if Brissett is not great and then May comes in and they win like 8 games in a row and he looks like CJ Stroud times 3 last year. And it's like, well, if we just started May early, we could have made the playoffs. We could have done XYZ. We could have went for a guy at the trade deadline. But I mean, realistically, this team is so young that something like that is probably not going to happen. They still have work to do at tackle, on different places along the offense. And this is going to be a slower churning rebuild like we talked about. And at the end of the day, that's okay. So I think you're right. I think
rookies starting. So right. It's not the worst thing in the world. The young guys are making progress. Just, you want to bring your quarterback along a little bit more gently, which makes perfect sense.
And trying to read those tea leaves from Mayo today and what he said and what they went through, I think if Drake May was going to be the quarterback, I think we would already know that. I think because it's Brissett, they don't feel like they have to really tell anyone. Like, for example, if May was the quarterback, they didn't tell anyone, and we went out there today, and in those videos I was able to post and we were able to record, you saw Drake May with Tyquan Thornton and Hunter Henry and Ramondre Stevenson. Then that starts a bleep show where, well, May's the quarterback. He didn't tell the team. He didn't tell everyone. Where's the practice reps going? Things like that, where it was Jacoby. It is Jacoby. It's going to be Jacoby. We're going to slow play this thing. And that's just kind of where this thing's going. And I think that ultimately that is the best course of action for this team right now. I got a little maybe impatience, the wrong word, but after that Washington game, it's like Drake May can play right now. Let's just do this thing, rip the Band-Aid off. But at the end of the day, let's give it some time. Let's see what happens. You mentioned the JT O'Sullivan, the insight and things like that. So I agree that it seems like the right decision for this team right now, and it seems like that's ultimately where they're going to go. So go ahead.
And I know that people have pushed back against, oh, well, you said it was a competition, but now you're saying there's a plan and all that. And I understand the frustration. I think it's, again, one of those things where Gerard sometimes says things.
He's just learning, though. Like, that's just what this is.
Learning. Yeah. Like, he's a very self-aware person, but it's just like Drake May. He doesn't know what he doesn't know. I do think it's a competition because if May had shown that he wasn't ready, that does affect your plans. Because you're saying that he's not even going to play for the first half of the season, maybe the entire year, as it was reported. There was some consideration to sitting him for the entire year, but he has made it closer to the point where Gerard Mayo said he's outplayed Jacoby.
Right.
Doesn't mean you got to throw him out there, but it means that now we are seriously considering Drake playing. Maybe now it speeds things up and you're in the process of preparing him a little faster. And also the fact that the entire offense needed to have some kind of stability with quarterback. And I do think it would have been tough for an offense with so many new pieces, learning a brand new scheme, to have 2 quarterbacks mixing in at the same time. It was already hard enough when they were mixing groups where it's like you're going to be the starting receiver today, but you're going to mix in with the twos. Like, I'm sure that was difficult enough. So I'm willing to wait on this QB plan and see what happens, because I do not understand. While I did think that Drake could start week 1, and I was adamant about that, I'm also, especially now the closer we are to it, I'm okay with taking your time. It's not even because I'm concerned about the offensive line even. That was an issue after the game, but now I'm like, you know what? As long as the discipline's fine, I don't really care about that. It's truly making sure that Drake just does the little things that he needs to make sure that he can be more consistent, and also is in a spot where you're not afraid of him developing bad habits because he hasn't reached a certain threshold.
So that's where we're at, Taylor. No quarterback decision just yet. Looks like we'll have one, or there's a decision. We haven't been told about it yet. Looking like it's going to be Jacoby Brissett. Gerard Mayo plans to tell the team tomorrow. 4 waiver claims processed, 4 cuts unfortunately made. The cost of doing business in the NFL. And that's a podcast. We're going to be back tomorrow.
Actually, one quick thing. This is from the mailbag, but I also understand why it'd be relevant right now. Someone was asking about the difference between PUP and short-term injured reserve, which I think is a pretty important thing that we can maybe clear up real quick. So injured reserve both are short-term. With PUP, they're out a month and then they can come back. I believe it's the same for injured reserve. It's a month and then they have the option to come back.
4 weeks.
Right. With PUP, the difference is you had to start training camp on PUP, and then that would allow you to have the option and not start the season. With injured reserve, you could have done it at any time, or it could have been at the end of at the end of training camp and preseason after roster cuts, but you only had 2 spots to do it. They could have put as many players as they want on PUP. You only had very limited short-term IR spots before roster cuts. Now maybe we see like Christian. I'm just pure speculation, just as an example, because they signed Curtis Jacobs. Maybe we see like Christian Ellis on short-term injured reserve, but that was a move where you have to keep some guys on the team to make sure that if you do end up cutting them, you have the option to bring them back and you don't have to expose them to waivers or anything like that. So just wanted to get that out there.
No, there's a lot of semantics and red tape that you have to go through with these roster stuff. And it makes sense again where you have these short-term spots. The thing that was tough, like Martin Mapu, right? He practiced, so he couldn't be placed on PUP. So then when he got injured in training camp, you have to use the short-term IR spot on him because he had already participated. Where if he was on PUP before, you could have just flowed him right into the season. He wouldn't take up a roster spot. He wouldn't take up one of your 2 short-term IR spots, and he could just go on PUP. So if that helps you,
that was better than what I did.
That's okay. It could have even confused people a little bit more, but it's tough. And if you have any more questions, honestly, on roster stuff and stuff that doesn't make sense to you, shoot me your DM, and I can either try and answer the best I can, or I can text Alex Barth for him to explain it to me, and then I can relay the information.
Or just flood Barth's DM.
Right. Exactly. So that's going to do it for us today here on Patriots Daily. We'll be back tomorrow with both a quarterback reaction as well as a mailbag to answer those questions from you guys on Twitter. So make sure you stay tuned. Like this video on YouTube. Rate, review, subscribe to Patriots Press Pass. And check out all of our written work on CLNSmedia.com. I just posted a Patriots practice report up there today. I'm going to have one of those up there every time we have practice to put in writing, attendance, some news and notes, and different things like that. So make sure you check us out over there as well. Until tomorrow, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And we'll see you next time. Peace out, y'all.